Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to February CQR. CGR, I just realized that didn't come out right. We are pleased to have Jade Adalbert join us today, and on that, I'm going to turn it over to Jade.
Hi, thank you so much. Good morning, afternoon, lunchtime. I thank you so much for having me. My name is Jade Adalbert. I am the Director of Prevention Programs at Durham Middlefield Youth and Family Services, and I'm also a licensed clinician in private practice. I'm honored to join you for your grand rounds today and to share the evolution, the outcomes, and the future direction of our project, Expressions of Healing, and to talk about the role of, to talk about the role of creative expression as intervention, expression, and healing within an acute and community mental health settings. I'm going to be kind of introducing myself a little bit later in the presentation, just because that's just kind of, I'm going to talk a little bit about myself in a little bit. So that's what we're talking about today. So before we get started, I wanted to take a moment to review the learning objectives for today's presentation. So by the end of our time together, you'll be able to describe the mission of Durham Middlefield Youth and Family Services and the purpose of the Expressions of Healing initiative, including how community art can promote mental health awareness and connection. We'll be able to explain current trends in acute mental health care and the role that art and creative expression can play as clinically meaningful interventions. We're going to discuss the importance of using art with marginalized and underrepresented populations with attention to cultural responsiveness and LGBTQ+ identity development. And finally, identify ways that you can participate in the 2026 Expressions of Healing event. You'll also notice throughout the presentation that I'll be showing artwork and submissions from the 2025 Expressions of Healing event. That took place on June 6th last year. Due to our time constraints, I won't be reading all of the artist descriptions today, but I encourage you to explore the full gallery on our website, where every piece is displayed along with its narrative. And there's a link at the end, and I can also send the link to everybody after the presentation. So Durham Middlefield Youth and Family Services is a youth service bureau. So although many programs are based out of the Durham and Middlefield area, we're open to the public, especially the Expressions of Healing event. And we're hoping to include submissions from people from all over. The mission of DMYFS is to empower children and families, foster a healthier community, and build resilience by decreasing risk factors and increasing protective factors through prevention, intervention, treatment, and community building. In my role as Director of Prevention Programs, I oversee community mental health and substance use prevention initiatives and programs, including the program that I'm here to talk about today, Expressions of Healing. So overall, the purpose of Expressions of Healing is to reduce the stigma around mental health and addiction, spark meaningful dialogue, and connect people to mental health and addiction resources. For the first iteration of this event, we had 9 local mental health organizations, some of which are seen on our page. You can also see that Root Center was there last year, and I think they're going to be there this year as well. I think that Andrea spoke to the overall purpose of the initiative best when she said, Expressions of Healing gave me more of a purpose other than my everyday life. Helped me overcome the fear of showing my art, and it made me feel seen, important, and that I wasn't alone in my struggles. The journey of Expressions of Healing began in 2023 while I was working as a primary therapist at a long-term addiction and co-occurring disorder treatment center. There, I had the opportunity to develop a curriculum for an 8-week therapeutic poetry writing group. During that group, members shared that the experience reshaped the way that they were able to share their stories. when I moved into my role with DMYFS, I brought that foundational idea of that experience with me, creation and art as an avenue of connection. It's as a way for people who have trouble or who are unable to connect and express themselves in traditional ways to do so. The first iteration of this initiative included 8 therapeutically informed workshops at the local high school, and the gallery event itself hosted 134 attendees and 140 creative works from people of every age and skill level, including several professional artists and poets. So my goal for the 2026 gallery is to grow the number of submissions and attendees to this event, as well as include a greater number of performers in the showcase. During the gallery, we are hoping to include an area where creators who have published books related to mental health can also sell their work, as well as an area for quiet reflection and grounding. So we are able to employ various artists throughout the year to host workshops in various mediums to build skills in different forms of creative expression. That way, the coping toolbox of the community grows. So we just hosted a mixed media workshop and a quilting workshop. And I can talk a little bit more about the quilting workshop a little bit later, because I'm going to talk about quilting later in the presentation. And so we had professional artists there guiding the experience for everyone. My long-term goal for Expressions of Healing is to outgrow the venue that we currently are in. So right now, the Expressions of Healing is hosted at the Durham Community Center. And eventually I'd like to bring the gallery on tour so that many of our inpatient artists can experience their art hanging in the gallery. And that, because that's something that we had some feedback on. A couple of our, we had a number of submissions from an inpatient unit, and because they were inpatient, they weren't able to see their art. So I also am interested in having exhibits in the show. So for example, I'd love to have an area with art created by folks who are struggling with chronic illnesses and how that impacts their mental health. Art therapy has shown to help decrease distress and physical symptoms and overall increase the feelings of well-being in patients with chronic illnesses like cancer, HIV/AIDS, epilepsy, and chronic pain. I would also like an area focused on caretaker mental health. As a clinician myself, I know how easy it is to burn out in this field. Research on using art-based therapy with hospice workers found that the use of art reduces burnout, builds resilience, nurtures compassion, fosters collegial support, and promotes mental wellness among those who participated. And eventually, I'd like to have this event happen regionally across the US. So that's kind of the past, present, and my hopes for the future. So this piece reflects the artist's 9-year recovery from an eating disorder. The title, Enough, speaks both to the feeling of never being enough and to reaching a point of saying, I've had enough of the disorder. Creating art and having strong support has been essential parts of this artist's healing journey. And I'm going to speak more to these points throughout this presentation. So now I want to shift into why this matters for clinical practice, especially in acute settings. Before talking about art specifically, I want to lay some groundwork and name a tension I think we're all aware of, that something is missing in the way that we approach mental health treatment. Let's start with the workforce pipeline. So the number of students who applied, enrolled, and graduated from accredited counseling and related programs in the last year has steadily been increasing since 2020. Yet, despite the steady increase of accredited mental health professionals, as of August 2025, the CDC reports that the national mental health related emergency department visits have stayed relatively stable across demographics for the last 4-ish years. More concerningly, various serious mental health issues, SMI, has significantly increased over the past 5 years, especially among young adults. According to a 2017 National Institute of Mental Health report, young adults had the highest prevalence of serious mental illness at 7.5% compared to adults at 5.6%. In the current report, and current being 2022, the percentage of young adults with serious mental illness has increased to 11.6 and adults to 7.6. Studies have shown that individuals with serious mental illness show higher rates of acute and chronic illnesses, receive lower quality general medical care, demonstrate worse long-term outcomes, and have a shorter life expectancy than the general population. And despite these rising rates, treatment access has remained relatively stagnant, with a 66.7% receiving some form of mental health treatment in both 2017 and in 2022. Most of the treatment for serious mental illness in adults was in the form of medication and or outpatient treatment, and that includes telehealth. As I'm sure you all know, a lot of the inpatient mental health services are centered around crisis intervention and stabilization. Inpatient psychiatry lengths of stay in the United States have been becoming shorter and shorter. The current average inpatient length of stay is approximately 5 to 6 days. When looking at the most common forms of treatment other than medications, CBT, or cognitive behavioral therapy, is consistently one of the most used modalities. Other common modalities are psychodynamic approaches, dialectical behavioral therapy, and interpersonal therapy. So what's going on? If we have more clinicians, more evidence-based modalities, and more treatment access, why are the worst indicators still climbing? Something is just not lining up. One thought is that the use of manualized treatments may not be as effective for certain populations. Now, CBT in particular has been extremely well researched and found time and time again to be effective, as with DBT, ACT, and other evidence-based treatments. And for anyone who has worked in a high acuity treatment setting, knows our patients they don't always follow the manual or are by the book. A study in 2013 found what we already knew, which is that CBT works better and that is it's more effective when clients do the homework, they show up and participate. So what does that mean for our treatment non-compliant folks? From my experience working in multiple 28-day inpatient treatment settings, I've seen my fair share of non-compliant clients who come in and out again and again, the proverbial revolving door of treatment. Of this relatively short-term treatment, I should say. Clients who attend groups but sleep through them, clients who continue to return after relapses with increasing amounts of shame, and clients whose shame is so great that they've given up, unconcerned with the fact that they've returned to treatment yet again. So I ask, what do you do when you've tried everything? Well, something different. A 2023 study in Australia showed adolescents receiving treatment in an acute inpatient child and adolescent mental health unit, which groups they found to be most effective and enjoyable. Of the groups offered, mostly talk therapy-based groups, art therapy was one of the most consistently attended groups, with a higher level of participation, which was only seconded to the creative activities and games group that they had. And the youth reported that the art therapy group was the most, quote, helpful group that was offered. When asked about the effectiveness of the talk therapy groups, youth shared that they felt like they were being confronted, they felt shy, scared, and bored. Although this promising study looked at youth in Australia, the evidence on the effectiveness of art and creative therapy is well documented. A number of studies have shown that the use of art therapy techniques produces positive results in adult inpatient treatment settings. They have seen that art therapy significantly decreased trauma symptoms as well as depression scores. when adults were given the Profile on Mood States brief questionnaire after participating in a weekly expressive arts therapy group, patients showed an overall reduction in the negative mood states and an increase in positive mood scores. And when asked how their experience with art therapy was, adults shared that their levels of stress, anger, and anxiety decreased in addition to their voice, in addition to levels of like them hearing voices. They also reported feeling that the art therapy space itself was calming and allowed them to express themselves in a way where they felt heard and made them feel, quote, more human. In adolescent inpatient settings, studies show that when youth engaged in art therapy groups weekly, their PTSD symptoms significantly decreased as opposed to the youth who are not in that art group. They also found that the group was trending towards a decrease in behavioral acting out, and it did not increase that measure at all. Another study of traumatized youth also found that after receiving art therapy interventions, their levels of suicidal ideation decreased significantly. I believe that all of the research that I just shared was perfectly explored in this submission done by this young person. This person said, "The focus of this painting is my mental health journey. The compass represents how I have navigated myself through my personal struggles. The semicolon, while symbolizing suicide prevention, also symbolized a way out for me in the past, a way out that I now know is not the only answer. The yin and yang symbolizes both light and darkness, showing me that in every dark situation, there is always a small light that will help overcome the darkness. Art truly is a clinically relevant, evidence-supported intervention." So during this next section, I want to talk about art as a tool of identity, culture, and belonging, especially for marginalized populations. Before I go into the research, I have included this submission titled Crush, written by an anonymous middle schooler. I won't read it all aloud today, but I've highlighted portions that capture the internal conflict, fear, and invisibility many LGBTQ plus youth experience. This girl says, "What if my crush is a girl? It's supposed to be a boy, though. It might be a girl. The boy would be a better option, though, right? I won't have judgy eyes or double takes or rude slurs being said behind me. I mean, it's 2025 and there's still 157 countries that being LGBTQ plus is not permitted. I fear that if I tell my parents, they will never look at me the same again. Why does this have to be so scary?" So before I go into discussing the significance of art, especially when examined in a cultural context, I'd first just like to say that as a person of great privilege, I'm a white woman living in a developed world, presenting at Grand Rounds. I am by no means the expert and the voice of marginalized and underrepresented people, but I can share what the research and history tells us. So with that, I would like to start with a bit of history. Due to the patriarchal natures of many cultures, men were oftentimes the ones to write down and pass on information and stories. Schooling was rare for girls in early America, which catered to boys until the late 19th century. So girls and women were left at home to do, quote, women's work, like cooking, cleaning, and sewing. Their stories were not preserved in writing. Instead, they told their stories through cloth. One of the ways women and African American and Black women in particular were able to express their experiences is through the art of story cloths and story quilts. These functional pieces of art were steeped in tradition and were ways for slaves in the Americas to communicate information and stories across generations right under the noses of slave owners. These quilts tell the stories and histories of trauma, family, and resilience. In 2011, the Common Threads Project began using story quilt making as trauma recovery for women who experience sexual and gender-based violence worldwide. case studies done on the efficacy of this organization's programs have shown that the women who participate in these groups share that their self-esteem increases, their levels of stress decrease, and they feel like they have a safe space or a safe place to be themselves, and that they feel a sense of relief and release in processing their trauma. Finally, the women report a connection to a community which they felt like they lost, along with their trust when the violence they experienced occurred. This was especially true amongst groups of displaced women. Closer to home, a Connecticut organization, Tricircle, is using the tradition of quilting as a way to remember loved ones who have lost their lives to addiction. As of right now, there are 2 quilts which are displayed at events across Connecticut, including at Expressions of Healing, as a way to put a face to addiction. The quilt square makers, or the quote people left behind, share that the act of creating their loved one's quilt is not only healing, but the connections that are made when they come together and connect have a healing and unifying effect. When working on this presentation, I was hoping to share cutting-edge research regarding how art is used in underserved and marginalized populations, and I didn't really consider that this would not be so easy. Unfortunately, the research on the LGBTQ plus community is rather slim, and much of it is outdated, behind a paywall, or refers to, quote, homosexuality as a mental illness, end quote. So I want to acknowledge this part of the presentation is not as up to date as some of the previous slides. That said, there are some studies done in the early 2000s on the importance of self-expression and emotional well-being, with the connection being that those who have the ability to express themselves authentically have greater rates of emotional well-being. Self-expression is the ability to assert one's individual traits, internal beliefs, and identity. This has direct implications on LGBTQ plus population, especially when it comes to the coming out process. There are many art therapy interventions that are designed specifically to explore personality and identity. One that is commonly used is the inside me, outside me, or the mask intervention, where the artist depicts what they do not show others versus what they do. When this is taken into consideration with the findings we discussed earlier on the effectiveness of art in self-expression and processing hard topics, it's no great leap to see that the use of art with the LGBTQ plus population would be beneficial. Now I'd like to show a few pieces from the 2025 Expressions of Healing Gallery, pieces that speak to how healing art and this initiative is. Also going to share a few quotes from participants who participated in the event. Rebecca Succi had this to say about the 2025 Expressions of Healing Gallery. I was moved by the submissions from all ages and felt a sense of connection at the gallery. As a high school teacher in the district, I see students navigate mental health challenges daily, and this showcase gave many of them a chance to express their experiences and to see their experiences shared by others when they engage in the gallery. The fact that all ages were represented in the gallery further emphasizes the need for openness, discussion, awareness, and resources surrounding mental health. From the soul-bearing submissions of art and writing to the local wellness organizations with tables at the event, Expressions of Healing is the approach to mental health that we all need and can appreciate. This artist created these collages titled Releasing, using torn found papers, a process that feels meditative and freeing because it removes the pressure to be precise. Throughout her life, she has struggled with anxiety, depression, an eating disorder, PTSD from early childhood trauma, and later diagnosis of borderline personality disorder, ADHD, and a visual spatial disorder that makes traditional art making difficult. Despite these challenges, creating imperfect and intuitive art allows her to relax, be present, and transform old materials into something new. These collages symbolize her process of releasing lifelong pain, childhood trauma, abusive relationships, guilt, and the belief that she's damaged, and moving forward and healing with healing and self-acceptance. Expressions of Healing. The Expressions of Healing art exhibit has given community members a powerful way to create and share artwork that reflects their emotions, feelings, and personal experiences. As a father, educator, and artist, I found both participating in and witnessing this process to be profoundly healing. Creating emotionally meaningful art and sharing it in this exhibit meets an essential need in our community, offering a way to express what words cannot. This sculpture, made by Ryan's daughter, explores how she feels about being a teen with type 1 diabetes. I'm not sure if you can see, but the ball is made out of her used insulin labels. And this is just one sculpture that she has in a series of insulin dependence pieces. Ryan and Anna, so father and son, they facilitated an art workshop last week. They presented on the mixed media and how you can share stories without words, and we had about 25 participants in the workshop, and both Ryan and Anna shared some of their work and the stories behind them. So Anna showed a lot of her work around being type 1 diabetes, like being a type 1 diabetic, and the struggle that she has and the toll it's taken on her life and her mental health. And was able to share that with a group of people, a group of adults, and was able to do that and felt safe enough to do that, which was pretty amazing. I'm hoping to get a lot more of her pieces next year as well, or I guess in the 2026 gallery. Kashawn Taylor was one of our professional poets at Expressions of Healing. His story is one he shares openly. He was a young and promising man on track to being the first person in his family to go to college, with a scholarship, that is, when tragedy struck. In his active addiction, he hit a brick wall, and he killed someone. Went to prison for a few years and came out stronger. Kashawn used this time to write poetry and work on himself. Many of his poems are about mental health and addiction, like this one, shown here, and so it was truly a gift to have him attend. When asked about Expressions of Healing, he had this to say: "Reading my work at Expressions of Healing was transformative, not only because it was the first time I ever read my work aloud to strangers, but because the event proved that what I was going through was not unique to me. Mental health struggles come in many forms, as do Expressions of Healing. The art, the writing, the community at this event was truly unforgettable, and I hope this event is something that can happen for years to come." So now that we've explored the evidence, the history, and the human stories, I want to leave you with several ways you can integrate this into your work at the Root Center and beyond. So the first thing is spread the word. One of the simplest forms of support is helping us reach community members who might want to create or submit artwork for next year's or for this upcoming year's Expressions of Healing showcase. Attending the event yourselves can also give you a sense of the reach and impact this initiative has. Last year's turnout showed just how strongly our community is seeking spaces for expression and connection. And I'll add that for those of you working in acute or high stress environments, which I think that would be all of you, attending or participating can also serve as an act of self-care. Creative expression isn't only healing for patients, it's restorative for providers as well. Secondly, you can collaborate through programming. Would love to collaborate with you on programming. There are so many opportunities to integrate creative expression into group work, workshops, or therapeutic activities you may be already running. I'm happy to support anyone here who wants to incorporate these approaches, whether that means sharing art prompts, providing background information, or supplying materials. If you're curious about how to weave expressions of healing into your existing groups in a way that is sustainable, I'd be glad to connect. I know that the quality of care that you provide is exceptional. What you offer is already strong. Creative expression is simply a way to enhance what you're doing, to give patients one more pathway to connection, reflection, and healing. Free sponsorship and support. So finally, sponsorship and institutional support helps us keep this initiative accessible to the entire community. Your contributions directly sustain programming, reduce stigma, and create more opportunities for meaningful engagement in mental health and wellness. Art is not separate from mental health care. It is mental health care. Thank you for your time today and for the work that you do every day for your patients and families in the community. I've attached my contact information, and I encourage you to reach out to me directly if you have any questions or would like to learn more. I have also put the QR code directly to the Expressions of Healing website for you to check out. At that link, you can also see all of the work that was here that you saw on the screen today, with all of their descriptions. I'm happy to take any questions you have, or if you've already integrated art or creative expression into your practice, I'd also love to hear about your experiences and what you found meaningful. I know that you all have a similar event coming up, so it would be great to hear a little bit more about that or talk a little bit more about that. And I have all of the references. This is my reference slide, so you can go through and look at everything that you need in your own time. But I think I'm going to stop sharing so I can see if there's any questions. Maybe you can interact a bit.
As I mentioned in the chat, folks, feel free to put something in the chat if you have a question for Jade, or raise your hand and we'll bring you into the room so that you could actually speak out loud.
Couldn't have been that great. Like I answered every question you could have possibly had in my presentation. Does anybody want to share like something that they are already doing that seems to be working? I did see someone raise their hand.
Raise their hand. Rachel, I brought you on the screen. You could ask.
Yeah, I really enjoyed the training. I just wanted to let you know that the meeting chat is turned off for the meeting still, so I'm not sure if other people are trying to respond.
Thank you.
But I'm definitely interested in some journaling prompts and things like that. I run a mental health group, so I would like to incorporate some art into it. It is telehealth, so do you have any recommendations on how to do that over that kind of platform?
Yeah, so that is always hard. Like the telehealth is always difficult, and something that I find that is lost with telehealth is the shared experiencing of doing something together. So what I have found to work pretty well is having one prompt that everybody does. So I do a lot of experiential stuff in my work. So normally I would have cards or items or whatever that I would bring to group with me if it was in person, and I would just ask people to look through and pick something and whatever prompt I have, like write about it or whatever, pick something that represents whatever it is. But if you're on telehealth, since you can't do that, I would recommend saying something like, okay, so before you come to the group or while you're in group, we're going to have 5 minutes, go around the space you are in. So if they're in their house or wherever, and then pick something that represents whatever the prompt is or whatever the topic is. If we're talking about mental health, like something that speaks to your that connects to your whatever struggle with anxiety, or the part of you that is coming up to the surface right now, or whatever it is. And you can reach out to me like individually. Like I'll put my email in the chat, so anyone can shoot me an email and I'd be happy to talk more. But then that way everybody has an object or has something experiential that they can all share together, because they're all going to be different even though it's the same prompt, and then they can share with each other what they brought, almost like a show and tell type thing. And then you could do something like that. So kind of bringing in all having the same experience, but also kind of being separate. So I do a lot of that sort of thing. So yeah, but definitely connect with me and we can chat more about this.
Okay, I love it. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Rachel.
Thank you, Rachel. And Rosalie just turned on the chat, and I'm seeing something in the Q&A.
Oh,
that might have been you. Yep. No, Eleanor. She's asking, are the art therapy activities primarily in groups? Do you think that showing the artwork is as or more beneficial than the creating of the artwork?
Yeah. So that's always a tough one, because there are, I think that would actually really depend on the group itself. So if you are in a group where it's like a working group and people are connected and they feel safe enough to share, it is super powerful to share. If you are in a group where it is, maybe it's open, maybe there's stuff that, maybe it's not a super long group, maybe it's only like an hour long, and people are cycling through it, and that sense of safety is not as present. Not that it's saying it's not present at all, but like it's not as present as a working group. That is like the groups that I would run at the long-term center was like 2.5, 3 hours long, and with a break in the middle, and it was pretty consistent. So you were able to do a lot of really in-depth group work, which was really something really, really special. That isn't always the case though. So a lot of in the 28-day programs that I was working in, it was a lot of psychoeducation. This is a 45-minute group. Let's get in, get out, let's go. And so what I found for the 45-minute, 45-minute groups would be to do the work together, share either in small groups or connect with whoever the primary therapist is and suggest that they create something in group and then talk about it with their individual primary therapist. I do think that, so in the groups where if you're not sharing, making sure that you're going around and pointing out and noticing things that are coming up in each person's work is also really helpful. So I had a lot of times where clients would be like, oh, that's not what I intended, or this is not, I didn't mean for it to be this way. And I'm like, well, there's always, there's always information here. All behavior is communication. So what is this communicating? And so kind of teasing it out a little bit in a way that is like, you can do that with the whole group. You can do that, one-on-one. That's kind of, that would be my suggestion. I do find group work when it's really like, when you're really in it, it's so beneficial. So I always tend to say, do it in groups. So I think it's both. So hopefully that answered your question, Eleanor. If not, I'm sorry. And also please reach out to me if I didn't answer your question properly. We guys saw someone else raise their hand.
There is another question in the Q&A from Maya. She asks, what is your experience with getting men to engage in art therapy / emotional expression? She's had several male clients who present with just a lot of stigma surrounding mental health and trauma due to being men and with their socialized views and expectations, but would probably really benefit from a creative outlet.
Yeah, that is always really tough. So something that I found, so it's interesting because so when I first ran the poetry group in the treatment center, I had a lot of highly sensitive men who were like, they were young, they were like, early 20s, late teens, not ready to be sober, too cool for school, I don't want to be here, sort of people. But they were really sensitive and they would write poetry or they would rap or whatever. And so really leaning into the creativity part of it might be a way in. I think part of that work is really trying to like destigmatize and like create acceptance around men having feelings. It would help. So there's, I don't know if it's the case for you all, but I know that there were definitely community leaders in the treatment where there was like, oh, there was a specific client who was definitely like a leader in the community and was would participate. So really leaning into the other members of the group who are taking it seriously, who are able to be vulnerable with their work, and then kind of encouraging participation like that way. That could help. There really is a lot of the groundwork of destigmatizing that needs to be done. And I wish that there was an easy way to be like, oh, well, then just do this prompt and like this will be all great. And I wish there was something like that I could suggest, but there really isn't. And it's just a lot of hard work. But when you do get people to open up, that is really important. I also think that maybe making it anonymous, or not anonymous, but like not you don't have to share, is also really important, and encouraging people to share, if they don't share in group, to share with their primary therapist, and then always being in contact. So if you are doing some art activity, sharing that with the rest of your colleagues to say, hey, we did this art thing in group today, so and so participated or seemed like they were not interested in participating. Like, let's go into that. Like, what is that? Like, why is that? What is so what's so bad about making art? Like, why is there all this resistance? And obviously maybe not like saying it like that, but kind of highlighting that and maybe talking about that in individual therapy as well. Did that answer your question? I also can't, I don't know, maybe I'm just really bad at technology. I can't see any of the questions. So hopefully that answered the question. So yeah.
I'm not seeing, oh, another question came up. Hold on. Oh, Maya said yes, that answered her question. Thank you. I think I might have had myself muted when I read Heather S's comment. Did you hear me say that?
I don't think so.
I think I had myself muted. So let me reread it. I love the aspect of this and love the inside versus outside my mind. And we did get another one. I got something via my email that said they love this presentation.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. I wish that I could like come back and share because next week I'm actually doing an inside outside mask workshop with some kids. We're gonna create masks. I have like the masks, and we're gonna create like the inside outside, what you share and show others versus what you don't. And then I also, something that might also be helpful for you all is to give like 2 prompts, one that's like more vulnerable and one that's less vulnerable. But that being said, like the less vulnerable one is still, you can still like spark a conversation and still go deeper. So with the kids, we're doing, what is something that something you don't show people, something you do show people. And then the less vulnerable one is quotes that are not quotes, excuse me. The prompt is like, what do you show when you go to school? Like there's, we all kind of wear different masks throughout the day and throughout our life. So like, what is a person, like who are you at home versus school, or who are you in front of your friends versus your family? So that might also be a way for people to be vulnerable, but also kind of step into it a little bit slower, instead of just coming out with like, okay, we're going to be super vulnerable today, kind of, ease into it. And then you can always go deeper with questioning and stuff. And this is my role. I'm a therapist, and I've done lots of therapy and like that, like, group work and that sort of thing outside of my prevention role. And in my prevention role, things are very much therapeutically informed, but I don't do that extra step of like, okay, let's talk about this. Like, why did you choose this thing? And let's go into all of that. And I'm definitely like, oh, okay. So like, this is super interesting. Like there's you have a guidance department at the school, like definitely, check in with your guidance counselor or whatever. So yeah, I think that's, hopefully, I think that's going to be a great mask initiative. So I'm really excited. And so hopefully you could all show up to the event. It's on, Expressions of Healing is on April 24th. It's a Friday evening. And it would be great you've like heard me talk about some of these things, and then you can actually see them at the gallery itself.
That would be great. Heather did respond, yes, thank you. I love that.
Great. Let me also put in the chat, I don't know if people can see it, the Expressions of Healing website, so you can look on there, and you can get all the information that you need. How to contact me is there, and then also how to register for the event in the showcase. And if you want to submit or have some of your clients submit, that would be, I would love that. I would love to see a lot of representation from Root Center, and that if it would be okay, I'd be more than happy to come and pick up submissions or drop off supplies or meet with you in person and talk about this. So I'm very open. Just shoot me an email or contact me through the website.
Okay. Any more questions or comments for Jade? Jade, thank you very much. I think we all agree that we love this. This is wonderful learning about what your organization does and how we actually can contribute to it and, you know, share with our community as well. So thank you.
Thanks, Darcy.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your afternoon.
Have a good day. Bye.
You too. Bye.